Nelson Mandela once said that vision without action is just a dream. And that action without vision just passes the time. But when you combine vision with action, you can actually change the world. And those are, I think, powerful words of wisdom from a man who helped change the destiny of 40 million people in South Africa. And what's more, his advice is not just true for those people who are going to be world changers, but that advice is just as true for every one of us here today, for you and me. His words apply to us as well. We can all dream dreams, can't we, about what we would like to achieve or to be in life, about making a difference, about being a great or even just a better parent, about spending more time with our spouses, about succeeding in business, about making money, about being a powerful evangelist or preacher maybe. We can dream about getting out of debt, about getting off the drink, about improving our relationships, breaking free of habits that cripple us, losing weight, getting fit, and so on. And on the whole, all of those are probably worthy goals. They're worthy dreams and they're worthy aspirations. But what Nelson Mandela knew to be true was that if all you do is dream about those things and nothing else, then that's all they are. They're just dreams. They're just fantasies. They're sad, hopeful illusions about a better you or life that will never actually come to pass. If a dream of a better life or you is to become a reality, then it must be actioned. It has to be given legs or it will end up going nowhere. And so the question is this: how do we do that? Well, people wiser than me have discussed this for years, and the collective wisdom is that you have to be smart. If you have a dream that you want to achieve, then it has to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant and time-based. S-M-A-R-T. It has to be smart. If you're going to have a dream that's going to happen, number one, it's got to be one that you can clearly state. It's got to be specific. It's got to be something that you can put down in maybe one word or one sentence. What is it that you want to achieve? When are you going to do it? How are you going to make it happen? Secondly, it's got to be measurable. It can't be something vague, intangible. If you're going to say, I want to improve my marriage, but you don't actually say how you're going to improve your marriage, then most likely it won't happen. But if instead you said something like this: I'm going to improve my marriage by having one dedicated night a week just for me and my spouse, a date night, then it's fairly easy to assess whether or not you've achieved that goal. And if you haven't achieved that goal, then I might be asking seriously, are you really serious about wanting to improve your marriage? Your goals need to be measurable. But your goals also have to be attainable. For me to say at the age of 50 now that I'm going to have a career change and to become an astronaut is an unattainable goal, probably. And while that's an extreme example, too many people set their sights too high to begin with. They aim for the stars, and when they don't get there, they give up on reaching for the clouds. Know your capacity. Know your resources. Know your abilities, and make sure that the dream that you dream, the thing that you want to achieve, is actually something that's attainable, and then go for it. I'm trying to get some little things to pop up here, but they're not. And fourthly, your goal should be relevant. It's got to be relevant to who you are and where you're at in life. Any goal that you put in place or dream that you want to achieve shouldn't conflict with or put at risk maybe the corporate goals that you share as a family or as a couple. It should be something that adds value to and builds on the foundation that you've already laid in your life. And lastly, your goal should be time-based. It's no good saying that before I die I'm going to visit Paris, or I'm going to lose 50 kilograms. You've got to You've got to give it a time. It's no good saying, I really need to get a degree to improve my job prospects. You've got to put a date on it. You've got to put a time frame around it. Because if you don't say when you're going to do it, then more than likely it will never happen. And I would like to add one more thing to the list that the smart people didn't add. And that's the one called prayer. In Proverbs 16 verse 3 it says this: commit to the Lord whatever you do, and your plans will succeed. God knows you better than you know yourself. He knows your heart. He knows your capabilities. He knows your motivations. God knows you inside out. And so what better thing to do when you dream dreams than to take those dreams and goals to God and allow Him to sift them through His goals and dreams for your life. And the ones that get through the sieve are the ones that are most likely to succeed. So take your prayer, take your goals, take your dreams to God and offer to them to Him as a living sacrifice. Offer them to Him and allow Him to shape them for you. So dream, pray, and then be smart. And I'm going to give you an example. Let's see if I can improve on this. Here we go. A few years ago, I made it a goal for myself to tramp all of the Department of Conservation Great Walks in New Zealand. Like many, I had dreamed of doing the famous Milford Track, but I'd never got around to doing anything about it. And then about 4 years ago, I decided I need to do something about putting my dreams into action. Well, step one, how did I do it? Step one was to grab my diary. Because my diary is really busy and it's always full of things. I grabbed my diary and I looked way, way ahead to where I had some spare time or a large enough gap in my diary to schedule the tramp. And then immediately I blocked out those days and wrote down the words Milford Tramp. That time was now set aside for the dream. If I had waited until closer to that time, other things would have filled my diary and it never would have happened. The gap would never have been there. So set aside the time. Step two was I took a piece of paper and I wrote down on that piece of paper everything I needed to do to make that dream a reality. From booking huts to preparing gear lists to thinking about how to get there and so on. And step three was to pick up the phone and to actually do everything on the list. To go on the internet, to pay the money, to book the huts, to book the accommodation, to get the gear together and closer to the time to actually buy the food I needed. And the end result is I've now managed to tramp the Abel Tasman, the Heaphy, the Kepler, the Routeburn and the Milford Track. And this year we'll be doing the Rakiura Track on Stewart Island in just about another 7 weeks. Not long to go. And what makes it even more special for me is that I'll be doing it with some of the folk in this room here today. But it only happened because I not only dreamed, I also made a plan. And then I actioned that plan. You want to make sure that your goals and your dreams happen. Action the vision. Put legs on your dreams. But you know, Nelson Mandela recognised another trap for those who aspire to achieve or desire just a better life when he said these words: action without vision just passes the time. Action without vision just passes the time. In other words, we can all be leading full lives. Lives that are filled with activity, committees, tasks and so on, to the extent that we never actually have the time to achieve anything. We might have dreams, but there's never a spare moment to make them happen. It's so easy when you're known as someone who is capable, or someone who gets things done, or someone who never says no, to get invited onto this or that committee, to agree to do this and that little job, to the point that you can end up overwhelmed. Jobs that you take on don't get done to the level they should have, and you feel guilty about it. More important tasks get neglected. Your real or main job can suffer at times, and you can become an absent member of your family, making promises to them that you can never keep, and so on and so on. You know, recently the OECD ranked New Zealand as one of the worst nations in the world in terms of the percentage of the population that worked very long hours. 20% of New Zealand men work over 50 hours a week and 7% of the women, compared with an average 9% for all other OECD nations. And that's bad, according to the OECD, because evidence suggests that when you work too hard and too long, that you impair your personal health, that you're more likely to be unsafe in the working environment, and you actually increase stress on your life, personal stress. So not only does working too hard stifle the dreams that you might want to achieve, it's also unhealthy, stressful, and damaging to your personal relationships. Now, I would love to tell you a personal story at this point to illustrate this truth, but to my regret, I think this is a lesson that I'm still trying to learn. Part of my problem is that my love language as an individual is acts of service. I demonstrate love and care by doing things for people. That's how I show love. And I'm also acutely aware of many needs in the community and around the country, within the church and so on. And often I feel the need to step in and fill the gap because often I don't see others doing it. That's not an excuse. It's just the reason I do it. But it's one that I need to work on. I need to remember that a need doesn't necessarily constitute a call. This year I've made some New Year's resolutions around hours of work, time with family and so on. And while it's only January, I seem to be sticking to them so far. I'm making sure that come 5 o'clock I walk out of my office, and that's hard to do, but I'm making sure I do it. So if you're working too hard, and if you're working too long, then make some changes. Don't say yes to anything new this year without consulting your spouse or talking to someone whose advice you respect. Make a list of everything that you're involved in. Go through the week, day by day and evening by evening, and note down everything you're doing. And then see if you can drop a few things if you need to, either immediately or maybe throughout the year. If something comes to an end because you pull out, then so be it. If something stops happening because you decide you can't do it any longer, then that's okay. You don't feel guilty about that, because it's better a healthier you than a poorly functioning committee or whatever. Nelson Mandela's last point was that when we combine vision or dreams with action in a life that's not already too overstressed, then we can accomplish great things. And he's absolutely right. So what great things are you going to accomplish this year? What great things are you going to accomplish this year? It starts with dreams. It starts with hopes. It starts with aspirations. Take some time to think and to pray about what your aspirations for this year are. What do you want to achieve this year? What do you want to do with your life this year? How might you make a difference in your family, in your workplace, within the wider community? Are there any habits you want to get a handle on? Habits you want to conquer? And don't just think about the material goals as well. Where do you want to be in 12 months' time with your faith? I asked that question last week. Where do you want to be in your faith by the end of this year? Where do you want your relationship with God as a disciple to be by the end of this year? And if you want to do something about that, what disciplines have you thought about putting in place to make sure that it happens? From long experience, I know that growth as a disciple of Christ, a follower of Jesus, depends on just a few things. You've got to be regular at church. You really do. You've got to be regular at church. You've got to pray and engage in at least one form of ministry where you give out instead of just receiving. I see people grow in their faith more than in any other way when they're engaged in a ministry where they're giving out and not just receiving. And maybe you could think about joining a home group where you're encouraged to learn more and grow, where you meet regularly and build relationships with a group of people who can support you and encourage you. Maybe you could find a prayer partner instead, just one person on a weekly basis whom you can pray with. Get together over coffee, over a cup of tea, keep a notebook, write down some things that you're going to pray for in your lives and your life of the church and the community, and just pray together. It's exciting when you do that, because each week you have a quick flick back through the pages and you can see the things that God is doing and the answers to the prayers that you've been praying. You might decide, well, I'm not reading my Bible very well. I'm going to try out a couple of different types of Bible reading plans this year and find one that works for me. They don't all work for us, but find one that works for you. Set aside time to pray as a couple, as a family, or as an individual, or with a prayer partner. You might want to adopt and support a mission, an overseas mission, or maybe a local mission. There are many, many possibilities about how you can grow as a disciple this year. So how do we action this message this morning? In the pews in front of you, there should be some notepaper and pens. I want you to take a few minutes now to answer a few questions. And I'm going to see if I can get them up on the overhead for you. No, they're not going to come up really, sadly, but that's okay. Question 1. Just hold this question in your mind. Take a moment to think about what dreams and goals you might already have or ones that you would like to achieve this year, and write them down. So take a few moments to write down some dreams and goals that you might have already started thinking about for this year.